here on the left. Now, that British warship that came in to survey Auckland Harbour just happened to drop anchor off the little park you see ahead of us. And it's on this park they then established that initial shore base on the park area. And this park area remained as the British Navy's shore base in New Zealand from 1840 up until 1881, when, with the opening of a dry dock about 3 kilometres down the coast where you would have passed the warships coming over on the ferry, they relocated there because of ease of ship maintenance. This then became the public park as it is today, the so-called Windsor Reserve. Now, coming up on the left, but it'll be hidden by the bus, you'll see it ahead of the bus here to the left. Of course, a native of Australia you'll be familiar with, a Moreton Bay fig tree, planted when it was part of the naval base. Oh, there's a pleasant little squaw, isn't it? Okay, now the other trees you'll see throughout the tour today, to the right hand side, some to the left and up the 2 hills when we get there, they're natives of the North Island of New Zealand. They are called Waitematā trees, also sometimes known as the New Zealand Christmas tree, because from about the end of October onwards, they blossom out into a lovely red blossom, and leading up to Christmas, hence the terminology New Zealand Christmas tree. There is a brass plate on top of a concrete block beside the footpath there, and this marks the site of the one and only ever public execution that's taken place in New Zealand. And the reason for that execution, in the area to the left of the bus lived Lieutenant Snow, his wife Anna, and daughter Mary. Now, Snow had been sent by the Navy from Australia to take command of the little shore base that had been established on the park that we've just left. They in turn had a neighbour, Joseph Bird. Guys, be careful crossing the road, eh?
Thanks so much, Graham.
A pleasure.
Have a nice time in New Zealand, you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Anyway, folks, the first industry here was boat building, using a native timber that grew in those days in profusion across the North Island of New Zealand. The New Zealand kauri tree. Now, I'm not sure if you've been outside of the city area and seen a kauri tree at all, but if you have, you'll know that it's got a very straight trunk, no branches coming out of it, simply the canopy right at the very top. And they individually take thousands of years to mature, and as such have a very, very dense grain. Ideal for building anything that's going to be subjected to moisture, so water, during the 1300s. Now, there's no written language, so they have no specific record, but archaeologists and other people of science who studied the matter say the Maoris migrated here by way of Tahiti and the Cook Islands, and then came on to New Zealand in 7 large double-hulled sailing canoes. When these canoes sighted the coast here, they then dispersed, going and landing in different parts of the country, so forming the original tribal patterns that existed here for many centuries. But one of those canoes, called Tainui, came into Auckland Harbour and landed close to where we're now parked. The memorial to the right is known as the Tainui Memorial, commemorating the arrival of the Tainui canoe here, and the inscription on it says during 1350. Now, in turn, on top of the memorial, you'll see a ball or a spear, and on top of that a bird. That is a good luck charm, supposedly a weeping dove that the canoe brought with it when it came to New Zealand in the 1300s. Now, being a very warlike race, as soon as they came ashore, they settled on high ground, as it's easier to defend in event of attack. So they settled on the hill you see ahead of us. And they called this hill, if you can see it, I'm not sure you can right now, but anyway, they called it Takapuna. Now the name given to a commercial centre about 6 kilometres north of Devonport today. But Taka in Maori means rock or mound or hill, and Puna means water.
Plenty of that today.
Get plenty of that. And as you'll see shortly, the hill is a hill surrounded by water and caves built into the side of the hill by those convicts. Now, during the military occupation, they renamed the hill North Head. I personally much prefer the Maori name, but North Head it was, and the North Head is what is continued to be called today. Now, I was going to say, halfway up the hill here there's a bus parking position, and I was going to park them. Now, to the left of the bus, if you can see it, the view opens up to the Hauraki Gulf, as it's called. So, the Hauraki Gulf to the left there, I'm afraid. Now, let me explain a little bit about that from here. Okay, all ships entering the harbour behind us, the inner harbour, where the ferry came across, known as the Waitematā Harbour, means in Maori sparkling waters. Not too sparkling today, I fear. Anyway, all ships entering there have to come in through the gulf, across the gulf here, around this channel, and around the hill to get there. So the ideal point to defend the harbour from, with conventional weapons at that time. There's the old promontory. Here we go. So they, as I said, installed guns and so on right round the hill, and it still remained as a fortified position up until the end of the Second World War, and then the military left the hill finally in the 1960s. And then tunnels, as you see ahead of us, were what the type that were built by those convicts in the 1880s, and the whole hill is a labyrinth of tunnels and gun emplacements. But obviously, again, you're not going to get out today to enjoy the tunnels either. Don't believe me. And so, anyway, this hill, as I say, defence position guarding the entrance to Auckland Harbour. Now, the other hill, normally you get out here for 5 or so minutes and have a wander around. But now the next hill we identified with is the one to the right. And you can see the sky's clearing over there, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Well, that hill the Maoris called Takarunga. Taka, again, rock or mound or hill, runga, in this case, meaning tall. Now, in those days, Devonport had 3 volcanic cones. This one, another one which I'll explain what happened to it later, and Takarunga. But when the early settlers arrived here, you'll appreciate the geographic isolation of New Zealand is such, and the summit of the hill could be seen from virtually every part of the city. You also had a time ball on the hill, which was another tall mast with a big black ball on it. And as the ship came closer, they would lower the ball down the mast, so people would know approximately when to go down to the waterfront. Looks like the squall has driven these sailing boats into the bay here. Anyway, for that reason, the early settlers called the hill Flagstaff Hill. But such was the influence of the British Navy back then, that when in 1857 they determined they'd make this their permanent New Zealand home, they named the area Devonport after the location of the British Naval Base adjacent to Plymouth on the south coast of England. They also renamed that hill. So here down the right hand side of this street here. All built of kauri, of course. Now kauri, when it's not painted, goes to a beautiful golden honey colour when it dries out. And most of these houses have beautiful... Now that's an example of many watchtowers installed into the roof lines of properties of that vintage right across Auckland. And the reason for the watchtowers, the owners of the property who had them built had an interest in arriving, cargoes and shipping. And they built the watchtowers there so they could view the flag signals on Flagstaff Hill. Population of Devonport today is around 9,000. There is no further land for future development, and very much a dormitory suburb with people commuting away from Devonport for work. Also a very popular place to live, and by the same token, for that reason, also very expensive. And I'll give you a specific example in a minute of a house that sold recently, coming up on the right here behind the white picket fence. As an example, purely that sold at auction recently for 3.2 million. So, very expensive area. It was built there in the Second World War to house US military that were based here. Most of the old buildings removed. Now New Zealand Navy's junior officer accommodation and part of the officer training complex. Now back in the early settlement days, Devonport used to be an island. No longer is, for reasons I'll explain shortly. But apart from by boat, people could get across to the mainland over a narrow strip of sand at low tide. That narrow strip of sand is today a beach directly ahead of us called Narrow Neck Beach. Very nice swimming spot on a good day. Also has a very active sailing club domiciled on the beach there. Many of the famous New Zealand yachtsmen have learned to sail there. So Devonport, the island, started where the houses are today on the left, and the mainland started on the other side of the beach where you see the houses on the right. And all the grassed area you're going to see shortly in between used to be sea, making Devonport an island. But back in the 1860s, the very industrious early settlers decided that they wanted to construct a horse racetrack here. And accordingly, in those days, Devonport had 3 volcanic cones. North Head, the one we're on before, Mount Victoria, the one we're proceeding to, and it also had a third, slightly smaller one, Mount Cambria, the local early settlers called it. The Maoris called it Takaroa. But being slightly smaller, they decided to quarry the mountain away and dump it into the sea between the island and the mainland. Well, they were so successful at doing this, they actually joined the two together. And the area you see to the right here now is a golf course. They turned into a horse race track. But because it's reclaimed from the sea with high tides, heavy rains and so on, it is very prone to flooding. And over the years, a number of jockeys lost their lives, resulting from horses slipping and falling on wet, heavy tracks. So they decided, after much public debate, to close the horse racetrack and reopen it as a golf course you see on the right.
When was the last race meeting here?
Well, the first game of golf was played there in 1905. So the first race, the last race meeting, don't have the exact date, but would have been in the late 1800s.
Ah.
Anyway, so we're tracking around the foreshore of Devonport as it was when it was still an island. Now, once the area had been reclaimed between the mainland and the island, then of course a road was put through. And Devonport was once well and truly connected to the mainland. Golf course very popular locally, always very busy. By international standards, cheap golfing. It's annual subscriptions to the club, $900 a year. Away and put into the sea. So now we'll proceed directly to the summit of Mount Victoria, and hopefully the rain will have gone and we can enjoy the views up there. Because once we get there, and if you can see the views, you'll quickly identify why the settlers put the watchman there, because the views out to sea and back to the city can only be described as second to none. But here again, our early settlers decided they would construct a water reservoir. And further down the coast there's a freshwater lake, Lake Pupuke. And they would pump water up from that lake to the top of the hill here to feed the people of Devonport with water by natural gravity forces. No longer actually in use, but still very much there, and still full of water, and very much being maintained by the Auckland, as they call themselves, water care company that looks after the water supply here. In fact, they were working on it yesterday. I haven't seen it myself, but I'm told that the brickwork and masonry forming the reservoir is an absolute work of art. I just hope my island got that rain, because that'll help the water supply for sure.
Was it good storm? Will you take
Yes, it will. Refurbished by the Auckland City Council, and it's a poets and writers retreat. Always very busy, so there must be a lot of writing and stuff going on. Now the rain's cleared, hopefully from shortly on the left, you'll be able to see the view opening out into the inner harbour, back to town.